Hello friends, welcome to YourPedia, and as you know, we have already launched a module related to management trainee for this materials management domain for your upcoming Coal India limited examination, right? So in that series, as we have told you over there also, that we will keep on discussing with you a few topics and very important topics from the exam point of view. So today I am going to discuss one such topic with you, right? And over a period of time we will keep discussing other topics also. So let's get started. And the topic that I have chosen for today is the Inco terms. This is a very explicit topic which is mentioned in your syllabus. Even if new syllabus comes up and all that, so there also we are going to have this. Definitely, this is going to have over there. So the topic that we have is the Inco terms, right? So Inco term basically stands for the international commercial terms. So IN stand for international, CO stand for commercial, and obviously terms. Now basically, as you know, when you carry out any business activity across the borders, right? Let's say when you are selling goods from one country to another, so maybe through any particular mode, by air or by land or maybe through sea, then you use different kinds of words in the contracts that you make, that a seller and buyer makes. So there you are going to use some of the terms which we call them as a commercial terms. So this is for the selling and purchasing activity. So they have been standardized basically. These are the standard terms which will be used, and you should have a clear understanding of those terms, because let's say when you will get into the Coal India Limited, obviously if let's say you are purchasing some kind of materials across the borders, then obviously if you have deep understanding of these terms, you will not face any trouble, right? So that is the purpose of this particular topic. Now we have some of these international commercial terms which have been mentioned to you over here. So okay, so in any case we are going to discuss all of them over a period of time, but today I have chosen a few of those Inco terms specifically of this particular domain, that is which are related to sea and inland waterway transport. So when you are transporting the goods or sending those goods from one country to another through waterways or maybe through sea also, right? So in that term, these terms are going to be used: FAS, FOB, CFR, CIF, etc. These are the prominent terms which will be used, and you should have the thorough understanding of these terms and the difference between them. So let's go ahead with this term. And the first term, so as I told you, what is Inco terms? Let's have the basic understanding, even though I elaborated to you. So as I told you, Inco term stands for what? So Inco term stands for, term refers to the international commercial term, right? What are those terms? These are the selling terms. So when you will sell the goods, one seller will sell the goods to other purchaser in another country, that the buyer and the seller of the goods both agree. So these are the terms that both of them have to agree. So not only both of them have to agree, that is the basic requirement, but in addition to it, when you're using those terms in your contract, let's say buyer and seller agreement, when you had that agreement, so when you're mentioning those terms in those agreements, they are legally valid terms, right? For example, when they will cross the borders, let us say they go to the custom authorities. So when they will see the document and this term is written over there, so they will accept that term. Okay, what is the meaning of that? So these terms, not only that simply between the buyer and the purchaser, they can be well understood, but they are accepted by the governments across the world as well as the authorities, legal authorities. For example, if at the later stage there is some kind of dispute between the buyer and purchaser, let's say if you have used the term CIF, now you cannot say that buyer will say, no, I mean to have the meaning of this word is this much, sorry, this notation is something different, whereas the purchaser will say, no, the meaning of this is something different. No. So they have been standardized so that there is no ambiguity, they are legally valid, as well as obviously purchaser and seller, they have understood it clearly. So that is the meaning of this, right? The Inco term clearly states which task, cost and risk factors. So basically, as we will be discussing these terms, you will get the clarity. So what are the basically these terms when something is mentioned? So it will represent that, okay, how much cost, who is going to bear and all that, and also the risk factors associated while transporting the goods from one location to another. So who is going to bear how much risk, and from which location, whether the buyer is going to bear the risk or seller is going to bear the risk. So all those kinds of things are associated with those terms. So those terms will make it clear. So when we will discuss them, it will become clear for us. The Inco term is agreed between the buyer and seller and states when the seller's costs and risk are then transferred to the buyer, and states when the seller's costs, okay, as I told you that, okay, they are agreed between them, and also clearly mentions, states mean over here, mentions that from what point along that journey that risk will be transferred to the this buyer from the seller. That is also mentioned over there clearly. That means the term will explain it clearly. Now it stands for this one, which are published by. Now you need to remember this one, because straightforward question could be asked, who published these particular terms? International Inco terms, who published them? So obviously it is the International Chamber of Commerce that published them. So which relate to international commercial law. They are accepted by governments. Now this is also very important, as I told you, they are accepted by the governments and legal authorities around the world. So that is important. If legal authorities and government don't accept it, buyer and seller accept it, carries no meaning. At later stage there is a dispute, you will have trouble. Or maybe when you have transported the goods from your location to another location, let's say in that country, when it lands up over there and that country doesn't understand those terms properly, government does not recognize that term, so you will be in trouble. Custom clearance will not take place, and so many issues can happen. So that means they are, first one, they are accepted by the governments across the world and also by the legal authorities. As I told you, if there is some kind of dispute, then there should not be ambiguity that, okay, no. So if they accept it, then I think it will be okay for us to go along with them. That means for buyer and this seller, it will be easy for them to do the business. Now ICC, again the same thing, International Chamber of Commerce, published new Inco terms in 2020. So latest version, because as you know, as the kind of this international law, trade laws keeps on changing, so also they keep on updating these if there are some changes on that. So they have updated these Inco terms in 2020, and they have come into effect from this 2020 January 1st, and originally they were published in 1936 and have continued to be published. So basically for you need to have the idea that which is the latest version or modification of these Inco terms, and since 1936 we have so many modifications, and now latest one is 2020. So it is important that all the parties involved in the trade should clearly understand these terms and these changes, basically whatever changes and therefore can be applied in the global supply chains anyway. Now let's go to the first Inco term, which is mentioned to you over here. That is and keep it in mind, I have already told you I am discussing right now those Inco terms which are specifically related to the sea and inland waterways. Inland waterways transport, that means when you are transporting the goods either through sea or either maybe through waterways. So now first term is FAS, standard terminology. What does the FAS stands for? FAS stands for free alongside ship. Now that rather this term clearly indicates that what it means. For example, let's say this is a country, let's say if I take any country, an example of let's say Japan, and they are transporting, you are transporting some goods from there. So buyer is over there in Japan, seller is in Japan, and seller is selling these goods, let us say in India. So this seller is sending goods to India. So obviously, let's say the quantity that used to be sent is too huge, and obviously it can be sent through only if quantity is big enough, bulky. So you have no choice but you have to send it through ships. So let's say this is the situation. Now what will happen is, so you are having a factory somewhere in Japan, right, at maybe distant location somewhere. Now what you need to do is you need to bring that goods or that all that goods to the location where ship basically are going to come. So over there I need to bring those goods. So for example, now if you have a look over here, you are having a ship berth over here where it is in the terminal, which is standing over there in the terminal. ship. Now what you need to do is you have to obviously, when the goods will come, then you are having cranes and all that, and you will load that whole of that particular ship, and then it will depart away. Now when we say free alongside ship, when you have used, let's say the seller is selling the goods to buyer, so when they are signing the contract, then in the contract they have mentioned that, okay, whatever the understanding we have, this seller says that I am going to deliver you the goods based upon FAS. Again, listen what I said. Seller is saying, in Japan is saying that he is sending the goods to the buyer in India, that I am going to sell the goods only on the basis of FAS. That is clearly mentioned in the term. If it is acceptable, okay, if not, then some other alternate we have to see. So okay, they have agreed, both of them have agreed. That is, let's say this is the, so FAS, what does that mean? It means that the seller will have a responsibility to bring the goods to the location where alongside ship, alongside आपको पता है, you know, already know कि उसके बगल में लाके जो आपने रख देना है सामान को, that's all. So बगल में किसके? Of the ship. So you will bring the goods and keep it alongside that particular ship. So let's say this is the area, open area, where, or these are the areas where you have to bring it from somewhere from the factory and you have to keep it over here. That's all. That is the responsibility, that is the only responsibility of the seller if you have mentioned the term or you have agreed to send the goods as per the FAS term. Right, now see, for more clarity, free alongside ship means that the seller delivers when the goods are placed alongside the vessel. Deliver, seller kahan tak deliver karega? Seller will deliver alongside this particular ship. For example, on the quay or barge, barge is some area that is embarked over there, earmarked over there, that's all, right? Nominated by the buyer at the named port and shipment. Now, keep it in mind, nominated by the buyer. अब ये, let's say ये port है, some port, I don't know, maybe, let's say Tokyo port, right? Randomly. So buyer has said that what you do is, in the Tokyo port at this particular terminal, you just bring that luggage or the goods and keep it over here. That's all. Rest after that responsibility is mine. Buyer is saying that. Under this term, he is saying you just keep it over here. Rest after that, it is my responsibility. So basically, the responsibility is transferring from this particular point to the buyer. Till this point, bringing from this factory till this point is the responsibility of the seller under this, because you have FAS, free alongside ship. Alongside ship, bring it, keep it. Keep it means obviously जो buyer है उसका कोई representative, he is going to check it. They will check it over here. There is going to be inspection agent. He will verify that whatever goods that you have brought from here to here, and when they were brought over here, they are in the right condition. If they are in right condition, okay, you just keep it. Now you go. Your responsibility is over now. It is our responsibility now from here onwards. That is the meaning of it, right? So nominated by the buyer at the nominated port of the shipment. Now, if you are saying that if this is a Tokyo port, bring it to the Tokyo port, and this berth I will pick it from there. That's all. That is the meaning of this. The risk of loss or damage to the goods passes when the goods are alongside the ship. Now, this is the risk. At this point, risk now transfers to buyer, and the buyer bears all the costs from that moment onwards. So, इसके बाद जो जितनी भी cost होगी, who is going to bear? Buyer is going to bear. So, if I very simple term, if I say what is FAS, so you will say free alongside the bring the goods. Seller will bring the goods to the point alongside the ship, give it, hand it over there to the buyer, and then his responsibilities is over. Now the responsibility of buyer start from that particular point onwards. Now again the same thing has been shown to you. That means you are having a quays, different areas where you can just bring that and keep that goods, and then obviously you are having cranes which you can put it on the ship over there. That is how the things go. Move on. And again, to make you understand it better, same thing has been mentioned over here. Let's say this is the factory. From factory, how you are bringing, that is none of the business of the buyer. Buyer is somewhere here, buyer warehouse, buyer is somewhere here. Let's say. So from factory, here you are having a ship, right? This is the point where you have to bring it. Now here is the berth of this particular ship. Now, so in whatever way, buyer is not concerned whether this one is bringing through truck, by air, by train, or by another carrier in between. That's all. He simply has to, seller has to bring it to this point called as alongside ship in that particular berth. Now, if you see over here, seller obligation is till that point. After that, the obligation of the buyer starts. Now, that means responsibility of the buyer starts, and that means transfer of risk. Risk is transfer. What is the meaning of risk transfer? That means, for example, अब हमने जो है hand over कर दिया, he has handed it over in a right condition to the buyer. That's all. Now you are having a crane, right? So crane, when you will pick the luggage, this whole of that whatever goods you are having, and then it has to put it on the what? On the ship. So whose responsibility is this? Whose responsibility is this of picking these goods from here and put it on the ship? This is not of this seller. Seller responsibility was only to just keep it over here. That's all. His responsibility is not that, okay, of transferring these goods from here on the board of ship. No. So it means, let us say, while picking these, let us say, luggage or these goods, let us say it falls. So buyer cannot ask the seller that, okay, this damage has happened because of you. Why? Because this activity, whole of this activity from now onwards, even including this particular like crane and transferring it to the ship, that is within the ambit of what? Buyer, right? So that is why all the, rather than again ship, if there is a damage in ship, this whole responsibility is, so this is the point of transfer of this particular risk. Now, the same thing has been mentioned to you over here. For example, where this is the transfer of risk, point is alongside ship. I already explained you. Now see, from the where the responsibility of the buyer starts, very clear over here. See, this is what? Original terminal charges, origin terminal charges. If you see the sequence, basically this is starting from the factory. Somewhere you are having factory, from factory you are packing it. Obviously this is responsibility of the seller only. You are loading, let's say loading on the truck, delivery to the port and place, again with the seller. Export duty, for example, if you, that country, let's say I had given you the example of the Japan as a country. So if they have put any kind of export charges, then obviously export clearance has to be done by what? That seller only. So this is the responsibility of seller only, taxes and all that, that is related to that country, seller. And then origin terminal charges. Origin terminal charges mean when you are having this one, you know, this is a terminal, right? This is a kind of terminal. So we call this a terminal. The berth where this ship is berthing, this whole one, this is a terminal where this you are putting up that goods and all that. So that is a terminal. Now keeping this is not free of cost, you know. So even this space I am utilizing, so these charges have to be paid to whom? Those authorities who are handling, managing this whole particular terminal, right? So you have to pay the charges for using this space to that terminal. That means the whole organization that is handling all that. So those terminal charges has to be paid by seller only, because right now you have taken some space over there. That's all. So those terminal charges also over there has to be the responsibility of what? This particular terminal charges, right? It was over there something. Origin terminal charges. Origin mean, if the example that I have taken is Tokyo, because same thing is going to happen on the India side also. You are going to have the port also. Origin, from the country from where it is originating, right? That. So that means terminal charges, seller. Now that's all. Now loading on carriage. Carriage mean over here, carriage means ship. So loading on ship. Now that is crane charges. If I have to say in a very layman language, the crane which is lifting, so obviously they are not going to do this job free of cost for you. So they are going to take the charges. Who is going to pay for that? Buyer. Seller has contract term with you, FAS free alongside ship. He is not taking the responsibility even transferring to the ship. So that means these crane charges and loading on the ship has to be borne by the buyer. After that, whatever the charges, whether they are the carriage charges mean freight, ship charges, of transportation charges, all that, insurance and all that, this is negotiable. We will see it later stage and all that. And rest part, bringing it till the India, let us say if I am taking the example of India, the all other charges are being borne by the buyer. So that is how this term, meaning of this term. So this term states you very clearly up to which point you have the responsibility, which party has the responsibility, and what are the charges included in that and all that. So if you have understood that term, this free alongside as a Inco term, other terms which I am going to discuss with you, they are just extension by a one step ahead, further, one step further rather. So if you have understood, I think it will become easy for you to understand other terms also clearly. The same format I will be discussing with you again since you have understood this one. Now, let's now go to the next term, which we call it as a free on board. Again, this is a Inco term, international commercial term. So FOB, free on board. FS was free alongside ship, ship के बगल में. अब क्या है on board? On board का मतलब है on that particular ship. On that particular ship. That is the meaning of this, on board. So when you are talking about the free on board, it means what you are doing is the seller. Again, if you take the same example from Japan and India, seller is over here. So now seller responsibility is to bring the goods to what point? Not alongside, but on board. They have to put it, these goods over here. Their responsibility till this point. That means what you will do? You will not only you will pay the terminal charges, not only you will pay the, I am talking about seller, not only you will pay this handling charges of that crane and all that. So these charges also included because you are doing this activity on your own. That means you are taking the help of this and then putting it over here. Now here, once you are putting it on the ship on board, then buyer inspection agent. How will you ensure? Obviously आपका कोई agent होगा तभी है वहाँ पर, कोई ना कोई होगा यहाँ पर who is going to inspect whether they are in right condition or not. So it means buyer का कोई agent अब क्या करेगा, यहाँ पर check करेगा. Earlier he was checking over here. Now he will check over here whether the goods that you have delivered over here, they are in right condition or not. If they are in right condition, that's all. So over here, if you know, responsibility lies up to this point now, right? So if I ask you what is the additional thing that is coming into picture, you will say only the charges of this crane. That's all. So free on board means that the seller delivers the goods on board the vessel. Vessel मतलब ship. On board the vessel nominated by the buyer. अब buyer ने बताया होगा कि ये vessel है. It's the same thing like FAS also. Only difference is buyer will be telling you, okay, go to this place, इस port पे, इस जगह, यहाँ पे deliver करो. That is the meaning of. यहाँ पर इस port के ऊपर इस तरह, because in one port you could have number of terminals also. तो buyer बताएगा कि जो ship है, that will come to terminal number, let us say 2 in Tokyo port. You just bring it and put it over there. Something either based upon FS or FOB. Now, nominated by the buyer at the named port of shipment and procures the goods already on. हाँ, एक और चीज हो सकती है कई बार. एक तो ये चीज है कि okay, you will deliver it over there. Sometimes it may happen that okay, Russia से आया ship वो, it's something this way, and it came to this Tokyo port, right? And then this has to go to India, let's say. Hypothetical example I am taking. Now what happened is this cargo which is over there in it, already in it. Now what happened is because of some situation, जिसने इसको यहाँ से भेजा था यहाँ पर, the party which has sent it from here to here, somehow it got stuck up and they had to sell it. They have to sell it. Now let's say now another seller over here, यहाँ से उसको बेचना पड़ा. Let's say it had to be sold to someone else but could not be sold. So some other party, let's say party one purchased it. They purchased it. Now, so what they are doing, once they purchase it, they are contracting with some customer in India and they are saying that okay, I am having these goods with me available right now at Tokyo port at this one. If you want to purchase, just buy it. If you are ready for it, I may give you a good discount also, something that way. That may also happen sometimes, and that happens in business situations. So many business situations. Now what you are doing is, so you don't need to bring it from factory from here to here because that was already coming from somewhere, that was already on board. So what you did is simply you purchased it over here and then further sold it, right? So that is the meaning of it, this particular or procures the goods already so delivered. Procures, purchases these goods and then further sells it. But क्योंकि वो already ship के ऊपर है तो obviously contract term क्या हो गया, FOB, already on the board. That is the meaning of it. Okay, now see, the risk of loss of damage to the goods passes when the goods are on board the vessel and the buyer bears the all costs from that point of view. ये मैंने आपको ऑलरेडी बता दिया कहां से ट्रांसमिट हो रहा. अब यहां से from this point onwards you are going to have the risk. Have a look over here. Earlier the risk was from where? Buyer risk starts from where? Earlier buyer risk starts from this point. Now since you are delivering on board the vessel over here, so from here seller has to ensure the goods are delivered till this point properly, and once they are delivered, then after that now the buyer's risk starts from this point onwards. Rather the costs and all that they have to go. So same has been shown to you over here. If you see free on board, that means seller is up to this point, and then after that one buyer's risk starts from that point onwards. Again, so I have already explained you this one, that which additional term gets included in the on the seller side. I said, see this point now. Earlier FS was this point, right? Loading charges, loading on carriage, loading on ship. Earlier it was the part of buyer, right? Now loading of carriage, because you are giving on board, so it is the part of now seller. So buyer risk starts from here now, whereas in case of FAS it was starting from here. In FOB it is starting from here. This is the additional term that got included, and thereafter all those other charges on his side. Okay, now let's go to another term. This is all these terms which I am discussing with you, they are the extension of from the basic term. Now we have cost and freight, CFR. See, what happens is, in earlier terms, if you may have seen that this buyer is saying that we have already talked with the shipper, that is the ship owner. You just simply bring your goods and deliver it over here, that's all. Freight part I will take care of by myself. Okay, freight part I will take care by myself. Freight of what? This particular transportation of that particular ship, charges, those charges I will take care by myself. So sometimes it may happen that buyer doesn't have presence, or that good presence. Let's say if you are a small buyer, you don't have very good network and all that. So sometimes you don't want to contact with that particular those freight agencies and all that shipping companies. So what you do is you say to the seller, okay, why don't you, since you are having a very good network, buyer is saying to seller that since at your side, since you are having a very good network, you are already in contact with so many shipping companies, why don't you contact them and get a best possible freight, best minimum possible freight from them, and you just negotiate with them, and then finally you send it to us. So what it means, what the buyer is saying, that you just include the freight also in that particular cost. You just negotiate with those companies by yourself, and then include that part in your whatever your cost is, and then sell it to me. So that is the difference in this term in addition to this FOB. What you're doing is, you know, we were saying, I will bring it to you this point, okay. See, have a look over here. You are having terminal loading on carriage, right? Origin terminal charges, and then you are having terminal charges, this one. So this was FS, recall. This was FOB, recall. Sorry, I think origin terminal, इसको मैंने गलत लिखा. Origin terminal charges, ये तो आपका यहाँ से शुरू हुआ, right? And then loading on carriage was this one, and now you are having additional term coming over here. So this was FS, this is FOB. We were saying free on board. So when we said free on board, then we were saying the carriage charges. Carriage charges mean who? These are the shipping charges, shipping transportation charges. They were what? These were earlier the part of, in FOB they were part of buyer. This was buyer earlier, So it means buyer by themselves, they were selecting the shipping line. They were simply instructing that, okay, you go, this ship of this particular shipping line will come over here, you just deliver it either FS basis or FOB basis. That's all. I have already negotiated with them and I will pay the charges directly to them. I will pay, the buyer is saying, I will pay directly to them, to the shipping line. That is how the situation was over here till this FOB, because all these costs below that was the part of buyer. Now buyer is not in that position. Buyer is saying, I'm not. What you do is, you by yourself take the freight, negotiate with them, and then include it in that total cost. So if you are including, now the seller is taking the charges, shipping charges, and then negotiating and then including it on that particular total charge. Now, so this is again becomes the responsibility of the seller, because seller is including the shipping charges and all that, right? So taking the shipping charges. So from this onward, all other costs and related things, they are the part of the buyer. But shipping charge is also taken by the, rather shipping charges are also arranged. More appropriate term will be arranged by the seller. Now, but what about the risk? The same thing. What about the risk? If I ask you, what about the risk? Now, risk part remains the same as it was in FOB. Risk gets transferred to the buyer from here only. Risk does not change. इसका मतलब ये है कि just because I arrange freight for you, seller just arrange the freight for you, that does not mean risk will go to me. No, I have simply arranged the best of the possible freight and आपको बोल दिया कि ये है, just give me the go ahead, I will include in the cost and you pay for that, that's all. But I'm not taking any responsibility. इसके बाद FOB free board पे, once you have loaded on the board, after that if damage happens, that is not a part of the, that is not the responsibility of the supplier, responsibility of the seller. So responsibility remains the same as it was in case of FOB. In case of this CFR term also, responsibility वही रहेगी. फर्क क्या है, मैंने आपके लिए जो है वो फ्रेट जो है अरेंज कर दिया खुद. फ्रेट मतलब जो अमाउंट, रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं ली. इसके बाद जो शिप जाके डूब जाता है कहीं आगे, why should I be? I am not responsible for that. So that they have to, buyer has to decide how to go for that, whether you will take insurance, they will take insurance and all that. That is their part. That we will see in next term. But I am not responsible. Seller is not responsible beyond that. So responsibility is risk. यहीं से रहेगा. फर्क ये है कि I have just included the cost part of that transportation also. That is all. So just have a look over here. What it says, cost and freight means that the seller delivers the goods on board. Now ये देखो, again he is mentioning seller deliver the goods on board the vessel. He delivers on board the vessel. This is his responsibility. That's all. ये same ही है जैसा FOB में. It's same like you are having in FOB. Or procedure, I have already explained you. The risk of loss of damage of the goods passes when the goods are on board the vessel. Risk कब transfer हो रहा है? वैसे ये बिल्कुल exactly all the statement. This complete statement is as if it is of FOB. FOB में यही statement हमने read की थी पूरी की पूरी. But what is the difference? The seller must contract for. Seller क्या करेगा? Buyer के behalf पे. Seller on the behalf of buyer will arrange for the cost and freight necessary to bring the goods to the named port of destination. Let's say टोक्यो से इंडिया तक आना है, जैसे मुंबई तक आना है. So जो ट्रांसपोर्टेशन की कॉस्ट है, that will be arranged because buyer जो कई बार buyer छोटा है, he doesn't have that big network, they cannot negotiate with those shipping companies. तो आप कई बार अच्छा freight मिल नहीं पाता आपको, तो इसलिए buyer बोलता है seller को कि खुद ही arrange कर दे, so that मुझे freight अच्छा मिल जाए, तो overall cost of transportation क्या हो जाए, कम हो जाए, right? So that is the meaning of this, right? So just remain clear about the cost and that of this. So ये मैंने already explain कर दिया आपको, and this is again the same thing, okay? This is the same thing only, that is buyer cost. This is a part of cost, not in terms of risk, okay? CNF, कई बार हम CNF भी use करते हैं term, but this is not a standard terminology. Standard terminology is going to be cost and freight, CFR. Sometimes we also use the term as CNF. CNF बोलचाल की भाषा में हो सकता है cost and freight, but as per the contract में जो mention करो, whatever you mention in the contract, that will be CFR because this is the exact Inco terms, right? This is mentioning in terms of cost, not risk. ध्यान रहे, this is mentioning in terms of cost. which I have already explained you over here in this case. Okay, there is another term called as cost insurance freight. Cost insurance and freight. फर्क क्या है देखो, what is the difference? Just have a look over here. CFR में तो आपका cost and freight था, इसमें एडिशनल टर्म क्या आया? कॉस्ट एंड फ्रेट तो है ही, इट इज ओवर देयर, बट इंश्योरेंस भी आ गई. नाउ लेट मी आस्क यू वेरी बेसिक क्वेश्चन. इंश्योरेंस किसकी की? ऑब्वियसली लेट्स से फुल लोड दैट यू हैव ऑन द शिप, यू आर इंपोर्टिंग, बायर यू आर इंपोर्टिंग, विल यू गो फॉर इंश्योरेंस और नॉट? ऑफ कोर्स यू विल गो फॉर द इंश्योरेंस, बिकॉज अगर जहाज ही डूब गया तो आपका तो सारा पैसा गया उसमें. But if you have done the insurance, if you have paid for the insurance, at least depending upon how much insurance you have taken for that whole lot, at least some amount you will be able to recover back. तो इंश्योरेंस तो आपको करवानी ही पड़ेगी. जब आप अपना घर लेट से चेंज करते हो, when you change your like from one location to another, तो जो ट्रक का आपका जो सामान लेके जाता है, they also ask you to pay for the insurance. क्यों? क्योंकि सामान लेके ही भाग गया कोई, तो ड्राइवर ही भाग गया, ड्राइवर नहीं भागा कहीं बीच में ही, वो पूरा गिर गया, वो कॉस्टली सामान था, देन व्हाट इज गोइंग टू हैपन? सो दैट मींस यू हैव टू टेक द इंश्योरेंस ओवर देयर. अगर नहीं लेते हो, दैट इज अ काइंड ऑफ ओके, दैट इज द रिस्क दैट यू कैरी. बट इन एनी केस, वेदर you have contracted FAS, whether you have contracted FOB, whether you have contracted, what was the term? CFR. Tell me who was doing the insurance from that point onwards. मतलब जब शिप चला वहां से from that port, who did the insurance? Who was doing the insurance for those goods? Obviously it was buyer. So basically buyer was doing the insurance of that goods. ये सारी goods की जो insurance किसने करा के रखी थी? Buyer ने. Right. So whether you are giving it on FAS basis or FOB basis or a CFR basis. CFR में तो केवल आपने freight दे दिया, बोले चलो आपने arrange करवा दिया. So it was so buyer was arranging for the insurance. Now what is happening is, buyer again now is saying that again same situation जैसे मैंने कहा कि आपको CFR में जाने की situation, let's say they are not in position and all that, so they say that okay, go for the insurance, get the some good insurance company and let's say arrange for the insurance. तो seller क्या करेगा? On your behalf. Now seller, what the seller is doing, the job which buyer had to do on buyer behalf, seller क्या करेगा? Insurance भी आपके लिए करके देगा इसकी. But that does not mean he is taking the responsibility again. Responsibility तो उसी की थी, किसकी? Buyer की ही है. From what point onwards? FOB जब दिया था उसने. तो responsibility remains the same from the point onwards of FOB point onwards, like you are having in CFR. But the only part is you have simply arranged the insurance on his behalf. Buyer के behalf पे आपने insurance वो कर दी है. That's all. और कुछ नहीं किया. So let's see, have a look at cost insurance phrase means that the seller delivers the goods. अब अगर ये statement दोबारा देखोगे आप, this the whole statement is exactly same as we had for the CFR, right? The risk and loss of the damage of the goods passes when the goods are on board the vessel, right? Risk same है, seller must contract and all that. So, पूरी statement वैसी है. फर्क कहाँ आ रहा है? Here. Let's have a look. The seller also contracts for, in addition to the contract for the freight, वो क्या contract करेगा? Insurance cover against the buyer's risk of loss or damage of the goods during the carriage. ट्रांसपोर्टेशन के दौरान जो अगर लॉस कहीं हुआ था, if there is a kind of loss, if it happen, to cover that on behalf of the buyer, buyer के behalf पे वो क्या कर रहा है? आपको इंश्योरेंस लेके भी दे रहा है, right? Obviously लेके दे रहा है, but that obviously has to be charged from buyer only. buyer नहीं finally पे करनी है, but anyway that contract term जो रहेगा, the buyer should note that under CIF the seller is required to obtain the insurance only on minimum. हाँ, इसमें एक चीज है बस ये ध्यान रखना कि जब let's say you are saying to the seller कि इंश्योरेंस भी करवा दो, आप ही अरेंज करवा दो इंश्योरेंस, लेट अस से, देन if CIF term is over there, then they are going to have the minimum insurance as per the terms जो भी उसका mention किए गए हैं. So they will go along with the minimum insurance. Let us say if that minimum insurance is that if you will pay this much amount, you will get the 50% of the total loss that will occur, let's say. But अगर buyer बोलता नहीं ऐसा नहीं, अगर कहीं damage हो ज्यादा हो गया, then so if they agree, if buyer agree for higher insurance, then obviously they have to pay higher. That can be negotiated. But if nothing is getting negotiated, then CIF means simply minimum insurance के basis पे जाएगा वो. That is minimum insurance cover के basis पे जाएगा. Should the buyer wish to have a more insurance protection, then it need to be एग्रीड, मतलब वो दोनों एग्री करे अगर ज्यादा इंश्योरेंस कवर चाहिए उन्हें तो. सो अगेन सेम थिंग, दिस इज द रिस्क. अब ये रिस्क नहीं है, ध्यान रहे, ये रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी इन टर्म्स ऑफ व्हाट ही हैज इंक्लूडेड, बिकॉज फ्रेट पार्ट यहां तक आएगा और इंश्योरेंस भी आएगा, राइट. एंड इफ यू गो ओवर देयर, सी द रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी पार्ट इन टर्म्स ऑफ व्हाट, रिस्क पार्ट. इन टर्म्स ऑफ कॉस्ट पार्ट, इफ यू सी यहां तक, जहां तक वो पोर्ट तक पहुंचेगा, मोर अप्रोप्रिएटली यहां तक, ऐसे बोलो, राइट. सो दिस इज बायर कॉस्ट स्टार्ट्स फ्रॉम बायर, सेलर कॉस्ट, सेलर कहां तक दे रहा है, इवन इंक्लूडिंग इंश्योरेंस एंड, यहां तक क्या है, कॉस्ट, इंक्लूडिंग इंश्योरेंस एंड फ्रेट ऑल्सो, दोनों चीजें इंक्लूड कर दी आपने सीआईएफ में. सो दैट इज अप टू, इन टर्म्स ऑफ कॉस्ट अप टू दिस पॉइंट. बट इन टर्म्स ऑफ रिस्क, रिस्क तो बायर का यहीं से शुरू हो गया, व्हेन यू आर पुटिंग इट ऑन द बोर्ड, राइट. दैट रिमेन्स द सेम. तो ट्रांसफर ऑफ रिस्क इज टेकिंग फ्रॉम हियर, वेयर एज द कॉस्ट इज इंक्लूडेड अप टू दिस पॉइंट, बिकॉज और कॉस्ट बीच में नहीं आ रही है. इसके बाद जो कॉस्ट आएगी वो, दैट इज बायर इज गोइंग टू बियर. Same thing, I think it is a different way of representing. Now insurance part, freight charges, seller. Now this is on the other side, right? So this is the buyer side. Now you are having all these charges now up to this point. Even in insurance you have included, freight you have included, loading charges and all that they have, you have already included, right? So this is how you have to see these different terms which are associated with the this that I discussed with you. So today I discussed these terms only which are related to your inland waterways, or I discussed with respect to sea, right. These are the, I think these are, not I think, but these are the only terms, most predominant terms which are used in regular kind of selling and buying practice at international like customers and all that. So we discussed about the FS, free alongside ship, then bagal mein keval, that's all. Then we discuss our FOB, that means board. On board means on the ship. And then we talked about CFR, now cost and freight. And then we talked about the CIF, cost, insurance and freight. So insurance भी covered है और freight भी shipping का. So they are in sequence. If you will see in sequence, I think there cannot be any ambiguity in this. So I think that is all for today in this particular video. In the next video, I will be coming up. I will come up with the more. Maybe let's see if I can discuss a few more Inco terms with you. That I also will discuss with you, or maybe some other topic I will be discussing with you. So see you then. Till then, bye. Thank you.